Are the Dallas Cowboys planning on letting Stephon Gilmore walk in free agency? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. It's a busy time of the NFL year. Despite no football games being played, we've got the NFL Combine, which kicks off today. Landon, you and I are getting ready to watch some of these drills. We've got free agency coming, in like 2 weeks? But on today's show, we're going to talk about the cornerback room for the Cowboys from the 2023 season and what we expect to happen here in 2024. I want to start with Stephon Gilmore, who the Cowboys traded for last offseason. Love that move. I thought he was really good for the Cowboys this year.
Yeah.
But after listening to Stephen Jones talk, I've got some concerns that he won't be back.
Yeah, I mean, the wording is just, look, we're trying to read tea leaves here, so there's nothing obviously definite there, but the wording did kind of seem like a sort of, gee, he was great for us. Man, we really appreciated everything he did.
A lot of past tense stuff.
Wishing nothing but the best for him in the future, kind of comment, right? So, yeah, it does kind of make you concerned that if you're someone that wants Stephon Gilmore back on the team, and I am, especially, look, I think he had more than a good season last year. I mean, considering the fact that you lost Trevon Diggs very early in the season, he basically became your cornerback one from at that point, and he really never let you down. He had an incredible season, frankly, start to finish. He wasn't, flashy in the way that Bland was at times, obviously breaking records with pick sixes. But I think as far as being a solid option and a guy that was denying the ball, and frankly, a guy that was driving the ball to Daron Bland's side when, as the coverage was going on throughout the season. So, yeah, I would like to have him back. I hope that, that they find a way to kind of work that out a little bit, because I do think he's a good player. But I also, after hearing that comment, you and I kind of, before the show just had a little hashing out of like, what does that look like without Stephon Gilmore? And, I think that they can do it. I think that they can, they can get by with the group and cobble together a decent cornerback room. But, there's a lot that could go wrong there. And to me, cornerback is a position that you just simply can never have enough. So kind of letting Stephon Gilmore go when he wants to stay is a money decision, which I guess makes some sense. But in a world where you're supposed to be kind of going all in or trying to win this year, it doesn't make a ton of sense to let a talented cornerback go out the door. Considering that you kind of were able to make the salary work last year, it feels like you should be able to do it again this year.
Yeah, I would like to see Stephon Gilmore back on this team. I think he was good for everybody on the defense. Even some of the veterans on this team were talking about like how awesome it was to have Gilly, like even in the cafeteria, because he was talking to them about nutrition and how to take care of your body. And I just think having more of those type of players, especially one like Gilly that's won a Super Bowl, helps, right? So I just want to preface everything I'm about to say with, I want Stephon Gilmore back.
Yes.
However, I can see how the Cowboys could talk themselves into letting Gilmore leave, right? You paid Trevon Diggs. The expectation is that Diggs is going to be back and be one of your starting outside cornerbacks. Daron Bland just had an all-pro season as an outside corner. I know he has the flexibility to play inside, but I've got to believe the Cowboys want to have him be on the outside. And where does that fit in for Gilmore, who's really an outside corner and not a slot corner? Does that mean he's your first cornerback off the bench. I don't know if he's going to take that at this stage of his career after a really good season. And then on top of that, we need to mention Jordan Lewis, because I do think the Cowboys are going to bring back one of these veteran corners. I would prefer it to be Gilmore, just to be clear. But Lewis is the type of corner that I think Mike Zimmer would really like. He can play the slot. He can really tackle well. I just won't be surprised if the Cowboys prioritize Jordan Lewis over Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised for all the reasons that you mentioned. I just don't know that it's a good idea, right? Like, and again, I have to keep bringing it up because I love the guy, and I think he played fantastic last year. And I am absolutely, I don't want to say shocked, but impressed that he was able to play the entire season without re-injuring that foot. And without dealing with, the obviously very serious foot injury that he had. And, more than that, it was a very serious injury.
It was a career-threatening foot injury.
Absolutely. I still think it is career-threatening. I mean, I guess that's where I'm at. Is I'm nervous that foot is not going to hold up forever. And You're talking about signing him to an extension. I want Jordan Lewis on the team. I want Jordan Lewis in the locker room. But I'm nervous about, choosing Jordan Lewis over Gilmore, and not necessarily having both because you need depth at the quarterback position, like I just mentioned. And
what if it's not choosing Lewis over Gilmore? What if it's choosing Lewis and I mentioned Dory Jackson pre-show, like somebody that's going to go for $5 million over Gilmore, who I have no idea what Stephon Gilmore is going to get, but he got $10 million last year. I've got to figure he's going to get around the same amount of money. I mean, I don't think he hurt his value. Maybe that's what the Cowboys are figuring. We can get two corners for the price of one here.
Yeah, and you get what you pay for. that's all I'll say.
True.
That's the thing is that I think you're paying for two guys that aren't as good, that both have injury history. So there's a possibility that you pay two guys, and the one guy that you didn't pay plays more games than the two guys combined. So, I think it's a gamble. That's all a gamble. And frankly, it's a gamble on the other side too. I'm not to suggest that Stephon Gilmore is guaranteed at 34 years old to play at the same level 17 games next year. That's an unrealistic guarantee as well. But I just feel like for me, I understand the idea of like trying to get cheaper and like save some money here, but it seems like it's the one of the few positions where I don't have any interest in going cheap.
Sure.
Like there's a reason that you spend money at the position. So, I like Dory Jackson fine. And I mean, I think that
how about Cordell Flott? We always make fun of that guy.
I mean, did Cordell Flott like actually take Dory Jackson's job at some point? Because that might be something to consider. Look, I understand the thinking. I understand it's trying to save some money and that you get two solid players for the price of one very good player. I just think that kind of thinking could backfire.
It could,
and that's problematic at the end of the season. When you need tough coverage.
I do want to mention that Stephon Gilmore will be 34. Before week one kicks off, and not to mention coming off a major shoulder surgery, which he's been a pretty durable cornerback for most of his career, but he does have a couple of big surgeries, in his medical history between the leg injury that he had a few years ago. I think it was the quad injury, now the shoulder injury. Maybe the Cowboys just feel like we'd rather be a year early than a year late when it comes to some of these corners when we're paying them in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not an easy decision, I think, and like I said, there's certainly risk on both sides. I honestly, either way can work and either way could fail. I mean, that's just the way this is. And I can certainly understand the idea of kind of trying to spread that risk over multiple players. I just think that there's a lot of intangible stuff that's involved with Gilmore that I would like to keep if possible.
All right, Landon, let's talk about the cornerback duo of Daron Bland and Trevon Diggs going into the 2024 season and how we feel about those two players next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you'd do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you go for a run? Would you take a nap? Would you read a book? A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can go and do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for any reason at no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. All right, Lana, let's talk about the Cowboys starting cornerbacks. Trevon Diggs coming off the torn ACL, and then we've got Daron Bland coming off the All-Pro season. How do you feel about that duo going into this season?
I feel great about the duo, right? Like, I mean, I think the duo is one of the top duos in the league when healthy. We'll see. I mean, obviously, it's gonna be a very wait and see situation with Trevon Diggs. The rumor is that he may not be a PUP candidate for training camp, which would be incredible.
Yep.
It's the same for Overshown, it sounds like, just to note. So that would be great. I think as far as the talent goes, Bland and Diggs, man, great stuff. Like, continue to get pressure on the quarterback, and they're going to be a solid duo. I like Jordan Lewis when healthy in the middle. I think, as a slot corner, like as a nickel corner, all the intangible aspects of what you need from a nickel corner, he has in spades, right? Like he's incredible at the toughness aspect, the blitzing aspect, the savvy aspects, knowing, how to read the traffic. Things move really quickly inside. So it's a lot tougher to kind of suss what's going on. And I think in those ways, he's fantastic. Now, could he be a little bit more of a sticky cover guy at times? Yes, there are some people that can give him some trouble. He really didn't get exposed a ton last year. So I mean, he really did play well above, certainly my expectations. So I like the trio really of those three. I just worry about, Jordan Lewis's health, how long, his endurance is going to be able to keep up with some of this stuff with dragging that foot along. He seemed to do fine throughout the season last year. He's now another year removed, so hopefully that's even better. But we've seen with these Liz Frank injuries that sometimes all it takes is stepping on it weird, and it re-breaks, and then now you're really behind the eight ball in your career. So I just want to make sure that if the Cowboys are investing in Jordan Lewis as their starter at nickel, I feel great about the outside guys. Their long-term future. Obviously, one's locked up. We're probably going to lock up the other one, hopefully, or at least you got him for a little while.
You got these two guys for the next 2 seasons, right? Daron Bland has 2 years left in his deal. What's really interesting, I don't want to get into the contract stuff too much, but the Cowboys will have basically a decision to make here in 2026 offseason. Like, they could move on from Trevon Diggs after the 2025 season and just give his money to Daron Bland and maybe just keep turning over that position. But you've got 2 Pro Bowl / All-Pro caliber cornerbacks on your roster. Both are in what should be the primes of their careers. Like, there's just not a lot of teams that have that pairing. So the Cowboys do have a big advantage there.
Yeah, and again, why I think it's important that nickel spot is really locked down, because no one's going to want to throw it outside. They're going to try to put their best player in the slot, and then they're going to try to expose Jordan Lewis. So I just want to make sure that, if Jordan Lewis is the pick to be the starter at nickel, and fantastic if he is, that there's solid backups behind there, because it's like I said, it's a physical position. He's an older player at this point, still coming off of an injury. And I think it's a position that's going to get a lot of work considering who's playing on the outside of this cornerback room.
I've got a couple just quick hitting questions regarding these two corners specifically. Who do you think fits Mike Zimmer's defense better between Diggs and Bland?
I think Diggs, because Diggs comes from a Saban background. He's got a lot of experience in this man match system. Honestly, this is probably going to be very much second nature to him in a way that maybe even Quinn's defense wasn't. I think Bland was a really great fit specifically for Quinn's defense because he played a ton of man coverage in college. He's comfortable doing that. Now we're going to see exactly, how comfortable he is in playing a lot more zone. Or at least playing the kind of zone that they play, right, where it's a little bit of man concepts mixed into it, right? So I don't have concerns necessarily that Bland's going to have any problems or anything, but I do think that Diggs will take to this because he's comfortable and he's been in this kind of defense before.
Who has the higher ceiling between the two players?
That's really hard, man. I don't know. I think that Diggs is more of an interception artist than Bland is. I think that Bland, look, obviously the pick six record may speak against me, but I think that Diggs has a better sense of how to attack the ball in the air and is more of a receiver type. I think Bland is very good at it, obviously, but I think Diggs is maybe the best in the league in that sense, right? I kind of think that Bland may be the more upside guy, though, because I just think it's a rare thing when you're very good in man coverage and you can get your hands on footballs. Like, that's just not something that happens a lot. So, you think about like the great interception leaders sometimes, and it's a lot of zone stuff because they have eyes on quarterbacks and the fact that he's able to play in phase and then turn around and find the ball and grab it, it's pretty impressive. So I might say Bland just because I think he's a better athlete than Diggs is. But honestly, you could toss a coin.
It's crazy that you said that Diggs, you think Diggs is the better interception artist, but it's Bland that's had 14 interceptions basically over the last year and a half. Because remember, he did start the first 8 games of the year. But I actually agree with you.
More targeting, though, right? More targeting. That's part of it, right?
But I agree with you because there's certain interceptions that Diggs has made that I don't know if really any other corners in the league make, because he can go up and high point the football and he plays it like a receiver. Bland is so good at like squatting on the underneath routes and then just driving on the ball and making a play. But man, there's been some plays where quarterbacks will throw the ball 30 yards down the field and Diggs is tracking the ball and high pointing it like he's Marvin Harrison Jr.
He's the receiver.
I know. Yeah. So it's crazy. It's crazy to have these two players on the same team. It's really upsetting that we didn't get both of these guys playing together last year. Really, for more than what was it? 2 games they played together.
Well, the three of them, right? Like that's the thing that we really missed out on, the opportunity to see all 3 of them playing, in these games. So yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, well, the first game that they played together, they gave up 0 points to the 0 points to the Jets, and then they smoked. Who they played in week 2? Was it the Jets? No, the Jets. Oh. Giants in week 1 and then Jets in week 2.
The Giants was going to the Jets.
So they gave up 10 total points the only 2 games they played together.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. All right. I want to talk about some of the down roster cornerbacks because the Cowboys have spent some pretty high draft capital on some of these cornerbacks. Are any of these guys potential options to replace a Stephon Gilmore or a Jordan Lewis in 2024? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. You can go bet on the Lakers, who just had a 21-point fourth-quarter comeback last night against the Clippers. They play again tonight, so go check their odds out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Landon, let's talk about some of these down roster cornerbacks because I think some might fit Mike Zimmer's defense well. Others, I'm not sure. I'm just going to name a couple of players. There's Nashawn Wright going into the final year of his contract.
Mhm.
There's Izzy Makamu, if you want to count him as a corner
Mhm.
/ safety, whatever. There's also Eric Scott, who the Cowboys traded draft capital in this year's class to go get. Do any of those guys do anything for you as solid depth options?
I mean, I think that McQuamu makes sense, as a slot guy, as an alternate guy. I certainly don't mind throwing him in there and seeing him work that. I'm interested to see where Eric Scott is, coming into this year. I think that he was obviously an upside pick, right? I think, he looked really great early on, and then, as training camp wore on, it just felt like the lights were a little bit bright and things were moving a little bit fast. I think with the year underneath his belt, there's a reason they held on to him, and I think he has something there. So I definitely think he could be a guy that could be mixing it up for a backup role on the outside. Nashawn Wright, I think I think he still is a good fit for this defense. Wright definitely seems like the guy that just kind of on the surface is the example of the Quinn cornerback, right?
Yep.
That and so I understand the natural inclination to think that he may be kind of out the door since Quinn's out the door, but I do think that
Yep.
I do think that he can, survive and play well in this defense because they will play some more zone coverage. I think he will probably thrive in that situation. Where Wright seemed to really struggle was when you're making him with keep his back to the quarterback and play a lot of man coverage where he has to be sticky. I think he can operate in a zone where he can use his long legs and his length to kind of just close down passing lanes. That's something that that he could do well in. So I do think that there are. I mean, I think a couple of these guys have upside still, or at least can function well inside this defense as solid backups. I wouldn't say that necessarily precludes the Cowboys, and it shouldn't preclude the Cowboys from targeting someone that they like in the draft, especially kind of in the the middle rounds or really even early if they wanted to. Depending on how free agency worked and depending on how the draft fell. If a guy fell to you at 24 that you felt like was, a starter that was going to be someone that you could put in opposite right away and play, it makes financial sense always to draft a quality cornerback in the first round.
Sure.
So you shouldn't be surprised or shocked if they pulled the trigger on that.
But what's really hard is I think the Cowboys want to leave Diggs and Bland as their outside corners. So if you draft a corner in round one that maybe doesn't have slot experience, is that guy just sitting on your bench to start the year?
Yeah, I mean, he's playing a role where he's going to have to be kind of folded in early on, right? So,
well, then you combine that with what our guy Luke Braun said about how Mike Zimmer hates rookie defensive backs, right? He just wants guys to be in the right spot. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just it's very interesting to see what they do at the cornerback room. It's why I think, Landon, you and I are both on the same page. We think they're probably going to sign either Jordan Lewis or a veteran and then maybe draft somebody else for depth. I'm a little skeptical that they're going to draft a corner at 24 and have that guy sit on the bench in a year where everybody else is on a one-year contract, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it would the situation would have to be right.
It'd have to be right.
I don't think that they're drafting a first-round corner to sit behind Bland or Diggs.
No,
I think that's more the situation that if they decide to move on from Gilmore and then get a middle tier veteran guy as their other kind of third corner, right, or fourth, I guess in this case, depending on how you want to look at all of this. That they would still go and draft another guy to kind of be the upside for that position. So, that makes a lot of sense.
No love for Noah Igbenogany, who the Cowboys traded for last year in the most inconsequential trade in Dallas Cowboys history. Kelvin Joseph for Noah.
No, I don't. I'm an Auburn Tiger, and I remember him from Auburn. So,
do you know how many snaps Noah played for the Cowboys this year? By the way,
on defense,
yeah,
I'm gonna say 3.
Oh no, you're lowball. 25. They
Oh
almost all
wow, he
came
did
in-
play that many.
They almost all came in week 1. Yeah, in their
Oh,
blowout
that's
game.
right. Yes, that's right. They did. They did get
Kelvin
us,
Joseph, I don't know if ever played for Miami. So actually, Noah Igbenogany is a free agent. He was actually a healthy scratch in a lot of games down the stretch. So
the Kelvin
I'm,
Joseph role, as we call it.
I'm gonna guess he's not going to be back. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how the Cowboys handle this cornerback spot because it's a position that Mike Zimmer really values. He tends to side with veterans that know where to be, know who they're supposed to be covering, and I just don't know if the Cowboys are going to want to spend a high draft pick on a corner. I saw today like Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold, both first round picks, said they haven't talked to the Cowboys at all. So maybe the Cowboys aren't all that interested in drafting a corner in round 1.
I mean, maybe because they're bringing Stephon Gilmore back.
That's the hope. Honestly,
yeah,
that would
that's
be
the
hope for
thing
me.
is that like we talk ourselves out of it, but then like when we talk about the Zimmer and the reality of it, it's like Zimmer likes veteran cornerbacks that are
I know.
reliable.
Sign me
I
up.
wish we had one of those guys that would like to be back in Dallas next year.
I agree. So let's just see how things play out because maybe the rest of the NFL will look at Gilmore as a 34-year-old corner coming off of an injury, and he's bounced around the league because he was Cowboys this year, Colts last year, the Panthers the year before that. Maybe they'll just say we're good,
journeyman.
and all of it. No, he's a journeyman, and now all of a sudden he goes for 1 year, $5 million, and that's just much more palatable for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see.
NFL would be dumb to do that because there's a quarterback shortage, and you don't let good cornerbacks walk out the door. And I think that's the one thing that I could say to sum up this thing. The good thing about the Cowboys and their cornerback room is one thing that they're not hurting for are numbers. They have a lot of guys that they feel like they can at least throw out there, even without Gilmore. There are teams that don't have 3 rosterable cornerbacks or, that they would even put on the field. But I don't think that's the problem for the Cowboys.
All right. Yeah, I 100% agree. It's just something to keep in mind over the next 3 weeks as we go through the combine, as we get through free agency. Watch out for that cornerback spot. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Landon on Twitter /X @McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.